Hi everyone, Denise Wenneker. Well, we're about to start. You know what it is. It's Thursday. Hold on. Oops. Alright, so let's shut this off. Alright kids, everybody have what they need? Alright.
The more wine you drink, the better I sound. So please, there you go.
Oh, well, thank you so much everyone for joining us. We always have a great time when you're here. Again, Denise Wenneker. Oh, I have to get my... I wasn't even in the frame. I was saying you get in the frame. I'm not even in the frame. I'm principal of DW Design Decor. We're an interior design and build business. And we have a few wonderful announcements for you guys today. So first of all, I want to introduce you to our new interior designer and team DW, Wendy Lewis. And she was really helpful in setting everything up with me today. Polly's at an event, so I kind of freaked out because, you know, Polly does a lot here. She's cooking and she does everything. So I hope you enjoyed everything and that it was, you know, good for you guys. Another thing that we want to tell you is we're going to be opening up a resource room in the back. So I had this extra office trying to figure out what to do. And since we have a lot of meetings here for our clients and projects, we decided that we're going to get more samples and resources and everything. So it'll kind of be exciting as this unfolds. So you'll be seeing what's in there, and so the next few times, well, maybe in a couple months, there'll be something else to kind of take a peek at. So that's really exciting. This year, I can't believe it's September, we have 3 more wonderful Thursdays. So in October, we have a local architect who's going to be talking about her point of view on some really interesting styles. So that's going to be fun. We have another one in November that's going to be all about rugs. So that's going to be really exciting, a lot of samples and kind of, again, it's always a 101 type thing. You don't have to have a lot of experience. Just, you know, come wanting to learn something. And then in December, we're having my friend who travels in Italy. She's there now, and she's going to be doing designs from Italy. So she's going to have a whole talk about what she sees there and from her point of view, which will be great. We have the big holiday party. We have ornament making, so that'll be fun. And then what we have planned in 2025 is we're going to go quarterly. Because even though we love to do this, we got a lot of stuff going on too. So we're going to just pare it down a little bit. We'll have you save the dates to make sure that you don't miss out on anything. Also, if you've missed any of our speakers, because we've done this for a year now, if you could believe it. And we have it on our blog, so it's denisewenneker.com/blog. And in the spotlight area, we have all the speakers that we've had in the past. And you can watch them on video and see all the pictures and all sorts of that good stuff. So not to worry. And again, we just hope that you'll keep on following us on Instagram and Facebook, DW Design Decor, and keep on top of everything that we're doing. So, without further ado, I want to introduce you to Toni Jeremy, and she is with Benjamin Moore, but she has an incredible background, which I learned when I was reading her bio about fine art background. Maybe you'll talk a tiny bit about that. And you've shown your personal artwork, and you have a master's in art as well. So, you know, who better to talk about color and now paint and everything but Toni. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And let's enjoy what she has to say.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you for joining us. Denise is a wonderful host. It's been great meeting Wendy, and she's done a beautiful display, and I'm really happy to be here. So I started off as the architectural and design representative with Benjamin Moore a little over 10 years ago, starting out with Long Island and Queens. Now I cover Long Island, Westchester, Putnam, and the Bronx as well. So been working with architect and design, and for quite a while, I had originally started out as a painter. I went to school to be an art teacher, and I did my master's and my bachelor's in art for education, and realized amongst teaching in high schools that there were just way too many kids around. So I found myself in the far reaches of the library, and I just kind of was really losing a sense of the professionalism of what art is really all about, and it ended up being a lot of discipline. So I was so fortunate that my representative from Benjamin Moore at the time had introduced me to the job that I am working in now. So my predecessor had actually, she had actually left the company about a week before, retired a week before I ended up applying for the job. So I get to educate architects and designers, people that are very specialized in this area, far more intelligent than me for sure, but we kind of have this little bit of a conversation that we get to talk about. Color and paint and finish and how shiny things should be, how technical things should be, whether or not there are laws that the certain types of paints are going to be applying to. So there are so many different subjects that we can talk about. Today, specifically, we're going to talk about the power of color, which kind of goes over the color psychology and leveraging a bit more of an understanding of color. If you are unfamiliar with IDCC, AIA, this is actually an accredited course. So for designers like Denise and for architects like Ken, they actually receive a 1-credit course for this. So there are things that I cannot say specifically about my company and the paints that we sell. And I also could not add a lot of the photographs of the different colors that I wanted to add to show you a little bit more inspiration. So I'm kind of saving that until the end. Didn't overdo it, but I just wanted to give you a little bit more of an understanding. So we are going to talk about a couple of different things. We're going to talk about color theory, go over the Munsell color system, mention a couple of different scientists, poets, then we're going to dabble in the difference between fads and trends. And then we're going to talk about color and how it's used in advertising and in the commercial environment, really gearing towards businesses, because color really speaks towards business in that it describes what the company is really all about and what philosophies that they really kind of charge up to be all about. So we have 5 senses, okay? We've got our tongues to taste, we've got our ears, we can touch, we can see, we can smell, but really the most important one, and I don't want to overdo our senses and which one's more important, but the one that we are really most subject to learning through and experiencing through is through our sight. They say that if you hear a piece of information, you'll remember about 10% of it 3 days later. But if you add a picture, you're more likely to remember a little bit more, like 65% of it. And that's why learning things like art history is so interesting and important, because you're not just learning dates and times and wars and battles and names, you're seeing people's faces. You're seeing painterly styles. So you really can understand the sign of the times a little bit more. So there are a lot of different industries that are very dependent on both the science and art of color and of sight. We've got neuroscience, geology, chemistry. All of this is really very involved in the world of sight. So a little bit of color history. We're all familiar with Sir Isaac Newton. He's the one that in 1660 discovered that when light refracts through a prism, that you see an array of the different colors that make up our visible spectrum. So what we call our Roy G. Biv, your red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet. If you had taken all of those colors again and compacted them back into one, you would again get white. So that's why white is so popular, because it's actually a compilation of all different colors in the same time that it's actually no color at all. So it helps to reflect our environment. So Newton also was very interested in sort of scientific elements to different colors. So he was the first person to take all of those colors and compile them in the color wheel that we would normally see, and we know scientifically. So we can work with, let's say, complementary colors, knowing that reds and greens are across from one another, yellows and purples work opposite one another. So it really kind of helped us to learn a lot about color. But he also attributed to the fact that those 7 colors, there were also 7 musical notes that are a part of a major, whatever music is called, but those main major notes. And then planetary symbols. each one of the planets kind of had its own sort of color. Mercury is white, Venus is green, Mars is red. So there are different attributes to each one of the planets that coincide as well. So when we talk about the color wheel, there are different attributes to the color wheel, and it's all about using this sort of arrangement to help to create a harmonious space. People never really think about going back to the kind of scientific element of the color wheel in order to figure out what colors they really want to work with, but it is really important to understand. When you really base everything back down, you've got your red, yellow, and blue, and those are your primary colors. That's where all color starts. Once you start to mix those, that's when all of the other colors are introduced. So mixing two primaries, like red and yellow, will give you orange. And then you've got green and purple are also your secondary colors. And you've got your tertiary colors, mixing a primary and a secondary will get you your tertiary colors. So your orange, yellow, and your yellow, green, and so on and so forth. So that's first, second, third. But there are more colors than that, right? There's also, somewhere in between, you're going to have a yellow-orange. And then you're going to have a yellow-yellow-orange, and a yellow-yellow-yellow-orange. So we really see more like 7 to 10 million colors, but we're really just kind of looking at these 12 major colors and breaking those down. If, let's say, I had mixed my 3 primary colors, instead of just 2 of them, I'm mixing 3 of them, what do you suppose I would get? It's kind of like a brown. It's in the paint world, let's say. It's sort of like, let's see, somewhere in there. It's not black, it's not brown, it's not gray. It's kind of like this muddy-ish sort of color in between, okay? Now let's say I wanted to mix my 3 secondary colors, orange, purple, and green. What would I get? I would get the same thing, right? Because if I'm mixing my 3 secondaries, essentially I'm mixing my 3 primaries, because it takes the 3 primaries to make the secondaries. And so on and so forth. If I took all of these colors, a teaspoon of each in equal amounts, we would get the same exact color. And now, what is it called when I take 1 teaspoon of this muddy color and I add a cup of white to it?
Tint. What?
Yes, I would be actually tinting it to make it lighter. But the actual color usually ends up in the conversation of like grays, beiges, which are rather popular colors in the paint industry, right? Reason being is it goes back to all of these colors. So beiges are a little bit more on the yellow scale, grays are a little bit more on the grayer, more purpley scale. Once you talk about actual grays that are made with black and white, so white being all colors, black being no colors, matches everything as well, because again, it goes back to it being related to everything. So working with the color wheel is a really good way to kind of pull yourself away from what color do I want, and give yourself a little bit more of a scientific way of looking at things and helping you to pair things as well. Sorry. So primaries, secondaries, tertiaries. Okay, so what did I just do here? All right, so you know that I just came up with my warm colors and my cool colors. But this has more meaning than that, right? You're never gonna walk into somebody's home and say, well, what were you thinking? Were you thinking warm colors or cool colors? Okay, so this is the most important question that a designer can ask their customer when trying to figure out a color consultation, a direction for someone's home. What is that question?
What a warm cool.
Debbie.
What type of look are you, what are you looking to achieve? What do you want the home or the room to feel like?
Exactly. What do I want it to feel like? How do you want your house to feel? Because people don't know warm colors versus cool colors. Would you ever even, if you were a design professional, would you really be asking yourself that? And you're thinking like, what is this room going to function as? Or what is my house going to function as? how do I want it to act, okay? So that really helps us to psychologically narrow down what is that person visualizing. Are they looking for a cool color, which blue is the coolest of cool colors, because remember, it takes yellow to make green, so you're adding warmth to it. It takes red to make purple, so you're adding warmth to that. So really the coolest of cool colors is going to be blue. So the bluer you go, the more everything just starts to relax. It's the everlasting sky or the sea that continues on. So those colors have a tendency to recede. They make a space feel a little bit larger. They make a space feel a little bit calmer. They give you a more tranquil environment. The lighter that blue, the more area it starts to feel in that room. The darker the blue, the more you start to feel a little bit more like an infinite space, almost like you can't really even see where the corners of the room actually are. Okay, so those are going to make a space feel a little bit larger. If, let's say, you had a loft that just was just so warm all the time, you could use blues in there to psychologically cool the space down a little bit. Okay? So you can really have fun with colors. And then when we talk about our warmer colors, these excite us. These actually advance towards us. Red color actually takes that concaveness of your eye and actually expands the concaveness, so it actually feels like a red is coming closer because of what your eye physically does. Okay, so these do make a space feel like it's advancing onto you a little bit more. So it could feel a little bit smaller, but it excites you, it engages you, and it adds for a cozy element. So those can sort of uplift people in another way, like bring a little bit more energy into a space. Okay? And so there are different, so when you say red, people start to think, oh, it's gonna be red. And I didn't even choose the right fan deck to really show you, but you can really kind of play around with all the different types of reds. Like this can be red as well. This can be red as well. Okay? So there are different tonalities of reds that we can play around with. So talking about the basic hue or the color family makes it a little bit easier for people to start to consider how the different kinds of colors that you're going to have access to. So we've also got Goethe, Johann Wolfgang Goethe. Basically, he came up with the psychological effects of colors. This is also very important because we sort of have that excitement and cheerfulness of our warm colors, and we have that sort of spa-like feeling that you'll get from our cooler colors. And he's the one that started to realize that there is that analytical element to all of these different colors. There's an amazing phenomenon. And when you break it down, you've got your purples and reds were known to be beautiful, your oranges are noble, yellows are good, greens are useful, blue is common, and violet is kind of unnecessary. So he sort of was creating this other world where people hadn't quite really thought about colors in a certain way, but it really changed the way that we looked at color. And then the next person to step into this was Munsell, and Munsell really actually changed the world of color for the better. He really helped us to understand it in a psychological, as well as an artistic, as well as a very scientific sort of way. And he broke it down so that it's put together in a three-dimensional model where you can see how colors really actually do blend into one another. So imagine that color wheel that I've got where, I'm just going to step ahead real quickly. So the color wheel that we were just looking at, I showed you a two-dimensional model. This is a three-dimensional model. So you've got your hues, your basic colors on your axis, and then you've got how light versus how dark they are. Those are your values, okay? And then you've got your chroma. So here we've got green, and the closer into the center of the color wheel you get, the closer you are to that muddy color that we were talking about just before. When you merge out towards the other side of the color wheel, away from the green, then what color would we end up in? And don't look at red. Okay, so the complementary color is red. So when we want to make reds a lot more muddy in the paint industry to head them towards brown, we don't actually put brown pigment into it. We would put green pigment into it, and black pigment into it. And that will actually break that red down. And then the same thing with green. In order to take a green from something like this to something like here, we could add red into it. We don't add brown into it. A little bit of red, a little bit of black, and that mutes it. So that makes it a lot more tonal. So we've got our high chroma colors in here. We've got our more tonal or more subdued colors that are closer to the center of their color wheel when you think about them in that aspect. So people don't really think about what it actually means when you say that a color is more toned down, and you don't really ever talk about it being more toned up. It's just more high chroma, which means that it's just very clean. It's very pure, as opposed to very muddied, subdued, or tonal. And so that's what he did, was he sort of created this kind of landscape where you have to actually play and mix and match different colors in order to create each one of these squares. That is just put together very scientifically, and it created that relationship originally for hue, value, and chroma. So does everybody understand this? Okay. So there would also be colors filling all of this area, okay, because this green is going to have a lighter version as well that's tinted, and then we'll also have a darker version as well that's shaded. So this three-dimensional model is actually really quite intense and interesting. And color matters in a lot of different ways, and what we do in the industry is we try to really separate the difference between trends and fads by understanding what's going to be a flash in the pan and is going to be out really quickly, or what's going to actually stand the test of time. So fads are things like mood rings in the 60s, and leg warmers in the 80s, and things that kind of really just pop in, get really intense for a very short amount of time, and then really sort of taper off. But fads do find their way back around again. You might actually notice them, the ones somewhere between trends and fads. There are things that sort of last like a good few years, and then 20 years later, all of a sudden, but it's like you don't really want what your parents had, you kind of want what your grandparents had. And so there's sort of that kind of interesting crossover as well. So color has been with us since early man. I mean, since the caveman days, we were taking ash and chalk and bone and basically grinding things down and making pigments out of that. And we use it to communicate. It's very important for us to understand that the things that we used in the past are very similar to the way that we still kind of do things when we sort of make paint. And but we're always discovering new materials and new knowledge, and we're always using all of that information to forecast what the trends and the fads are actually going to be. And each one of the pigments that we have actually has like a really strong history. Reds throughout history have been known for high nobility. Madder red and red that was made from like the blood of cochineal beetles. That's why the Spanish Empire was so strong for so many years, was because they were able to make red dyes from little pregnant bugs that they found in South America. Okay? To be able to make that and be able to sell that, like in the Italian market. If you've ever seen paintings of the Medici of Venice, the very high noble artisans, that was because they were able to afford red dyes. Or Pompeii, the Villa of Mysteries, that one building that has all of the different rooms painted in red, that was the way that those individuals showed off their wealth. So green is very important, and it's kind of had a very strong nobility, but also like just a very strong kind of like link to spirituality in a lot of different cultures. But when it comes to that one particular color that was only accessed by not even nobility, but by kings and queens. Do you guys know what that color is? Purple. Purple was the hardest color to make. You couldn't just take a blue pigment and a red pigment and make purple. You actually had to have purple. And it took 10,000 mollusks in order to make 1 gram of purple dye. So only the regality could really afford that until when the invention of aniline dyes in the late 1800s. Black is another important color. It wasn't really recognized in a color until more like the 20th century, but it was very much known for a status symbol in Italy where politicians would wear it. And so it took a while for it to actually become kind of its own color. This is not a good thing. We have a tendency to associate different colors with different timelines, and we kind of know and understand that. The 1930s, we didn't really have a lot of new colors that were coming out because the world was in the Great Depression. So everything really went back to the earth. That's when Frank Lloyd Wright started to really create sort of his a lot of his buildings and his multi-homes, and really using nature. And he had stated that, use nature in order to inspire what colors that you want to use. By the 1940s, we weren't really branching out very much. Again, now we were in a world war, so you had patriotic colors were sort of the branch away, but then you also had military colors were something that was popular. People were designing their homes by, adding some glassware or just putting some linoleum flooring down or maybe getting new cabinets, but people weren't really doing a lot in the world of interior design. It wasn't until the 50s that America really started to come into itself, and we were able to find what colors separated us from the rest of the world. So there was that inspiration of the silvers that were coming from all of the different the airplanes that now flight. We had taken flight and managed to get to Europe rather quickly, so that silver became really important. And people were traveling to the islands, so that combination of turquoise and lime greens became a fun, inspirational way for people to kind of express themselves. This was also a period where in America, blue became for boys and pink became for girls, because we were able to sort of have that sort of separation of what was popular, and we kind of created this kind of bubblegum society. So color became a way that we started to message what we were all about. And you can just sort of see that by the vibrance and the vitality. America was really coming into itself in the 1950s. Once we got into the 60s, that was the major splash. We were really kind of pulling out this kind of acidic sort of element to colors. And as we know, we also attribute the 1960s to a lot of fads, a lot of layering of different patterns and materials, being very extroverted with color. Now we kind of still have a lot of those colors, but we just pair them in different ways. So again, just very high chroma, very acidic, very communicative about what was going on in the world. Because we really look at what the political landscape is, what the social landscape is, what's going on in the world, and that was a way that people were able to rebel, was through their clothing and through their way that they were designing and the colors that they were surrounding themselves by. And then once we get into the 80s, you kind of have a little bit more of a quietness of colors, but new colors are now available. Again, that regeneration of the silvers is coming back out. Again, it's kind of like the 1920s, stones and agates and things became popular again. Blacks and mauves. It was all about kind of setting the tone. And the 80s were sort of like a psychological and an emotional kind of escape. People weren't, it wasn't like the 70s where people were kind of coming back home, rejoining themselves, finding their comfort, finding their grounding again. It was more about being very expressive, and those sort of very icy, cool colors was very much a sign of the times. So when it comes to fads versus trends, when it comes to trends, those are typically driven by consumers like a functional need, which is all about a lifestyle trend, whereas the contrast of a fad is going to be about hype. The lifespan of a trend is generally going to last around 8 to 10 years, whereas a fad will just shoot up real quickly and then spike back down again. And then it also has this scope, which a trend encompasses several brands or products that are applicable to many different consumer segments, whereas fads are typically very narrow in scope. So if you can imagine, like when the Heinz ketchup company came out with, one summer they came out with green ketchup bottles, and the lid was all about geared towards children having more ease in squirting ketchup out. And that green was really something that was very interesting, and it was very commercially oriented. And it's not something that's going to last forever. It's not even very appetizing. But it really grabbed a lot of attention. It gave them the ability to make a whole big batch of greens and then play around with other colors and then just be done with it. Okay? So it's this memorable moment. So our design teams, when we come out with our color trends and our colors of the year, we look at a lot of different industries. They look at art throughout the world because Europe is a lot more progressive than America actually is when it comes to art and color and fashion. They look at the automotive industry. So there's kind of like, they're trying to figure out what's going on throughout the entire world. Other countries are often 1 to 2 years ahead of us. So, and their job is to kind of pull those very interesting, intriguing colors and try to tie them into how to work with them in interior design. They want, in our industry as well as in our company, to be able to make things very interesting. They want people to be brave with color, but they want it to be able to last for the 10 years that, you know, that you want your designs to actually last in somebody's home. So whether white is the main color, or gray is the main color, or beige is the main color, that element is supposed to last 10 to 20 years. And then what other colors are really making a splash are kind of like what we look at. And when people start to ask you like what the popular colors are, it's really a hard question to answer because we know, but we're always forecasting for the year to come, not necessarily for like what's going on right now, because it's all about making sure that we can sell paint and inspire people. And so when we do our color trends as well, it's all about making sure that 1 year to the next, that the palettes that we put together can actually flow very synonymously so that they work really well. Because not everybody's going to design the entire home all in 1 year. They're going to do one portion, and then they're going to have a phase 2, and then a couple of years later, they're going to have another phase. The color is very big business because it's very emotional. So yellow is very optimistic. It's exciting. It's cheerful. Yellow is the first color that we see. Our brains are able to kind of grab onto that, but it's also very light and very fun. So it is often used in businesses that want to remain optimistic. They want you to feel excited about walking into their space. Orange is very cheerful. It's kind of got the interest and the fun of the yellow, but the seriousness and the activity that you get from red. So it's kind of the adventurer. Okay. Red.
Nobody likes orange. Nobody wants orange.
Yeah, I know.
It's one.
I love
to
orange.
color every day, all day. I love orange too. But I'm sorry. I feel bad for orange because nobody wants it.
Just put an orange lamp.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about the secondary colors, they don't really get as much attention. Purple doesn't get as much attention. Orange doesn't get as much attention. Green kind of acts like a neutral.
Yeah.
Orange is one of those colors that often is either best kind of toned down into kind of a clay-like orange, but becomes associated with like a Tuscan kind of sort of landscape, or sometimes you could look at orange like more like the pastel version, not necessarily like a sherbety, but almost a little bit more like a natural blush, like a skin tone. It's, you know, it's important to think about orange not necessarily as orange, because not a lot of people like that. That can become a little unnerving. But kind of like orange. Sometimes this is a little bit more natural or a little bit more leathery, and you know, something like this. I mean, the chairs that you have in here are orange, and they add an element of fun, and they make the space a little bit more uplifting, and they make it cozy. And orange is all about, like, it's about activity. It's about making a little bit more of a social space. It's about keeping people talking and keeping things a little bit more exciting. We'll go into it a little bit more. Red is a lot more about excitement. Red really actually kind of excites your system. It gets your blood flowing. It gets your vital life forces moving a lot faster, and that's what those businesses really want to portray, is they want you to act, and red does that. Purple is very regal. You don't really see it a whole lot in advertising because it's got different, like, more spiritual kind of connotations to it. So it can be kind of serious. Blue wants to create a dependability. Green is very peaceful. It's very grounding. It wants to bring you back to the earth. And I skip gray. Gray, being a mixture of white and black, is all about finding balance. So yellow is the color of the mind, okay? This is the color of intellect. Yellow does not get involved emotionally. Even though it's connotated with being very cheerful and optimistic, it's more like the color that you see when you first wake up in the morning because you've got the sun streaming in, and it kind of brings you back to like that first thought that you have. It helps you to study, it helps you to learn, because it's kind of that first light that you see, and it's the intuition that you have. It's all about your intellect. But it is very thoughtful, it is cheerful, it is fun, it helps with clarity of thought, it's really good for the practical thinker, and it helps you to be analytical, it helps you to make moves much more quickly. There are many different types of yellow. Remember, here in advertising, we're going to work more with very high chroma yellows. Giallo is all about, it's a shoe store. Giallo means yellow in Italian. But this shoe store has this kind of conveyor belt, and it wants to create sort of a fun, but uplifted, but intellectual atmosphere. It almost wants to put itself above everybody else in a way. And this is all about contemporary materials and kind of very much like a call for action. It's very dynamic. And it's all about kind of having wings at your feet. You can tell sort of the way that things are angled, and the very polished materials that they use in there is all about making sure that you are feeling very excited. When we go into this sort of retail design for the shirt factory, this kind of adds a level of youthful cockiness to the male person. It kind of has almost a regality to itself. It really calls for its own sense of identity. It's very strong in what it's trying to say. And it's all about signaling the fact that they have a very good attention to detail. You can't use a yellow like this very faintly. You have to be using it with a lot of intention. Orange is kind of adventurous. It's very social. So it pulls that excitement that you get from red, and it also pulls in kind of like the intellect that you get from yellow, and it gives you a little bit more of like an adventurous spirit. Orange is really good for people who deal with depression, because it has that cheerfulness to it, but it's not completely overdone. So I always say that if you have a tendency to feel depressed, or if you're going through a difficult time, always give yourself something orange. I always like to have orange nail polish on when I know I might have like a tough week or something. It just gives you a little bit more uplifting spirit. It's optimistic. It's not really easy to use in our everyday life, and it's not really something that we see very often, except for very seasonally. And so it does have a tendency to attribute itself in ways that become very seasonal. But it's also that kind of yellow that you would see in a sunflower. It's got that easygoing fleshy tone that you can see in cantaloupe. You have to sort of reimagine the uses of orange. But it really helps us to kind of get motivated to see the bright side of life. And so it is really good for people. It's not very good if you want to, if you're on a diet, not a good color to be painting like your kitchen with. Mm-hmm. But just think about when you do have those kind of orangey Tuscan tone in the kitchen, how much more warm and inviting the kitchen actually feels. People are going to be a lot more likely to sit in an orange kitchen for a longer time than they would sit in a blue kitchen, because blue just doesn't really mean, spurring your appetite. Okay, it doesn't make you hungry. It doesn't have that red in it that makes you hungry. Bubble Splat is a Sergio Menino, and this was actually one of those spaces that they do candle making and craft painting, and they really needed to operate on a budget. So again, you need a very inviting space. You need a space that kind of actually hugs you and makes people want to linger a little bit longer. So playing around with all of this sort of matte orange on the cabinets against a very light blue wall, two contrasting colors, really brings the orange that much more forward, to have it not on a white background, but to have it on a blue background. It's so overpowering that you kind of don't even necessarily notice that you're looking at a blue background. So this is just kind of, just a fun place where people can feel comfortable, but also feel energy and activity to pop back up and grab another element and do another craft item. It's got very utilitarian sort of benches. There supposedly is another section that has a very yellow loft to it, but you can see how they're kind of taking that sort of buttery color and reflecting the lighting in that. And then they've got little red accents as well. So that's one of those ways that you can tone back an orange, is by sort of creating a little bit more of like an analogous setting. It's a very subtle analogous color scheme, but you have all of your warm colors, and the more that you see them together, the less the orange actually starts to stand out. This is a chocolatier that really felt that they really wanted to talk to the chocolate, but also to the metal flakes that they use. They actually use like gold in their chocolates. So this brand orange that they have, they kind of wanted to reflect it in a way that was going to create a lot more activity for their space. So they did it in the beams, and they also use it on their shelving units as well. Red is a very exciting color. It's very passionate. It calls for action. If you are not a very self-secure person, you can make yourself feel a little bit bolder, a little bit more powerful by surrounding yourself with red. If you want to make grandma drive a little bit faster, you get her a red car, because that color adds for more excitement. It gets our blood flowing. It pulls our eyes out a little bit more. It heats our systems up. It makes us thirstier. It makes us hungrier. All of our vital life forces actually start to work on a little bit more of a hyperdrive. It gives confidence. It can be revengeful and angry and kind of spiteful in a way. It does have a lot of negative connotations that people don't really quite consider it, because we talk about red in love. Red is not necessarily, even though we associate it with Valentine's Day, that's more a color for passion. Okay, so that's what they're trying to do in Valentine's Day, is excite passion. Pink is a lot more of the love and the nurturance. So this is all about kind of motivating us to take action. So companies like Puma can have this one giant accent wall with all of these different forms that pop out, create highlights and shadows to, again, give more activity. And that will make people more decisive in buying more shoes while they're in there. It gives you a very dynamic color scheme to play around with and to just feel like you're a little bit more in and out. Italy's color in old motor racing events was red, and so companies like Ferrari have taken that red and made it their own. And every Ferrari has red in it somewhere. It's basically their signature color. Pink is very nurturing. This is the color for unconditional love. It's that red with a lot of white that's really calmed it down. It makes things feel more affectionate, more intimate, a little bit more feminine, somewhat, more romantic. Okay, it levels people's emotions out a little bit more. It's something that they say there's that jail cell wall paint. Well, that's actually a thing. They will put inmates in pink rooms just because it will calm them down a little bit more and make them not really feel love to their neighbor, but even just feel a little bit more wholesome and nurtured in themselves and not less likely to be committing more crimes. It helps us to show tenderness and kindness. It gives us hope. There are things like being in the pink and feeling rosy. And so those are all about just feeling like a little bit more of a healthy mindset. It calms us, alleviates negative feelings. And then there are companies like Tally Wheel or even Victoria's Secret that use it as a way to sort of incite a little bit of passion, a lot of femininity, and they do it in a way that's very pungent by using these really kind of high chroma acidic things and making them very exciting. So, all about fashionistas and all about, a star-like quality kind of really drives home their brand elements. This is a flat that's in Yishun, which I believe is in Japan. The entire flat is a very minimalistic style, but this kitchen is just really all about being as dramatic as possible and drawing attention and a lot of activity in this space. Purple is the color for imagination and spirituality. It takes that activity and that effective nature that you get out of red, and then it also takes the calm that you get out of blue, and it kind of holds together two very opposite colors and makes a blending out of them. So it's very introspective. It's very spiritual. It helps us to get in touch with our deeper thoughts. It represents our imagination, it represents our future, our thoughts, but it also has kind of a grounding element from that blue. It helps us to associate a little bit more with like the transformation of our souls. It can be very sensitive. It's also very aware of the world. Purple really wants to kind of be sort of like a social worker in a way. It's not very full of ego. But when you have spaces like this, that are the highest bar in Hong Kong, this is kind of like all about ego. This is sort of a space for C and B C where you can see all of Hong Kong from this 18th floor bar. It's called the Ozone Bar in the Ritz-Carlton Hotel. It's just one of those places that you can go and have a really swanky drink and always have a DJ and again have a really unforgettable experience there. Doddle is one of those parcel stores in the UK, and they're all about making sure that they have that social work and that ability to save the climate by being a lot more earth conscious. What they do is they basically reduce the amount of commuting that parcels will make to somebody's home by dropping them off in these Doddle stores. So they have really decreased a lot of carrier and a lot of CO2 in their atmosphere. Blue is a color for trust and responsibility. Blue is a color that we like to seek information from. There's a sense of loyalty. There's blue is very big business. It is actually most people's favorite colors. Not necessarily what people always want to design their homes with, but there is a sense of information and calm and like a cloudless sky, and there's a mental relaxation, and you can trust more when you are surrounded by that mental relaxation. So it's something that people wear a lot of because it gives you that confidence to say, okay, that's the person that I want to go talk to when they're wearing blue. It speaks the truth, It's very communicative, and it makes sure that it gives very good attention to anybody that it is speaking with. The LinkedIn Blue, huge with their brand identity to make sure that you feel like they are a main source for information and communication and networking. IKEA also, again, just another blue that has actually been created for them to, iconicize the Swedish flag. And, having this sort of play on different primary colors really brings a lot more activity, and again, another call to action. Even though blue is very calm and serene, it's not screaming, come spend money in my space. It's not that call to action, but you do get that excitement from those two different colors operating off of one another. I mean, I can't even hear the word IKEA without feeling like, oh, I want to go explore. There's always something that you can see and do there. It's very happy, it's very optimistic, it's very imaginative, and it just makes you feel like you're going to find something. You can't walk into an IKEA and walk out with nothing. Green really takes that calmness that you can get from blue and really balances it out with the excitement and the cheerfulness that you get from yellow. So it's very harmonious, very grounding. Green is a really good color to use when you want a color, but you actually just want to kind of calm a space down and make it almost feel like a neutral. Okay, so much of this earth is green, and when you have green right outside your door and you paint your walls green, then that actually can make it feel sort of like it's neutralized the space as well. You just kind of brought the outdoors in. It's a really good balancer for your psychology, your heart, your emotions. It really helps you to create a lot of equilibrium between your head and your heart. Being a color of the earth, I mean, what do? When we go for a hike, we escape to be in nature, because nature just has a very natural, soothing effect. And a lot of that comes, from the air that you breathe and the trees that you smell. But the colors that you're surrounded by really do help to influence your inner sense of calm. It's a peacemaker, it's a charity worker, it's a helpful neighbor. Green is a really powerful color that actually we kind of underestimate in a lot of ways, even though it's a very popular color to design with. This tea company wanted to create just a variety of different teas so that people could feel a little bit more comfortable with coming in, trying new things, knowing that they can venture outside of their normal comfort zones, but do it with confidence because they are an informative source, so they are a great place for good advice. And then we've got another Sergio Menino design. This is the shoebox store down actually in Long Island in Liberty Plaza. That's over by where you are. And they've really kind of used green and interplays of different tones and hues and some values of green in order to make the space a little bit more playful, but also kind of feel very balanced, feel very earthy. And in a way, it does simplify the design, even though they've actually contrasted it with pinks and then also kind of pulled in purples, which is, again, related to pink. So you have more activity. When you pull complementary colors in like that, the way that we saw the orange bookshelves with the blue background, it creates more activity. This, too, creates a very dynamic color scheme with all of these different panels. White is very pure. This is the color for perfection. It's very innocent. It's very complete, even in its not so whole, not so completeness in many ways. It does reflect all different colors. It reflects colors of the environment. It gives us a very good sense of calm, sense of peace, sense of comfort, but also a little bit more of an expanse for our imagination. So we can think more clearly when we are in white. It can be very reflective, which can also make it kind of feel a little bit isolating if you're using too much of it, layering too many whites. But this is all about keeping a very open mind, giving you a blank slate, wiping things clean, and just kind of stimulating your senses in different ways. This exhibition by Zaha Hadid is all about white forms, white curves, and almost that feeling of isolationism that you can get by being surrounded by too much white, even though you do have all of these shadows and reflections being made. She's a very popular artist and is supposedly a very big influence for other cultural forces and creative forces like David Bowie and Damien Hirst. Here we've got a house by Richard Meyer. This house is out in Michigan. If you're unfamiliar, he also did the East Islip Courthouse, which is another really amazing structure. So he feels that the best way to paint architecture is to paint it white, because it will in effect reflect the environment that it's in. There is a little bit of like, you do have shadows, but you do get a little bit of like a yellowy greenish reflection coming off of this home. And then once the leaves on the trees start to change, again, it stands out, but it also does a lot of reflection. It's got a lot of sharp contrast, and that really brings attention to the form when it's contrasting with the environment that it's surrounded by. Black is very mysterious, it's very protective, it's very secretive. That's why it kind of originated with the politicians in Italy and merged into like Chanel's little black dress. So that mysterious seductiveness kind of keeps its emotions at bay, doesn't let you in. It is not at all lacking in self-confidence. It's all about making sure that it hides its insecurities and its vulnerabilities. It's not a very good two-way communicator. So if you want to be a salesperson that doesn't really get to know people, black is something that you're going to want to wear. It radiates authority, but it can also kind of create a little bit of fear in the process. So it's all about being very independent, very disciplined, very strong-willed. It does have a very strong elegance to it. Black, even though it can kind of stand out and be very much in your face, it also does recede in a lot of ways and can make a space feel a little bit larger by having that kind of infinite space, especially when you merge walls into ceilings. So it can make a space feel a little bit small, but it can also make a space feel a little bit big. If you've ever gone into restaurants and noticed that the ceiling is black, it's hard to tell where the ceiling actually is. So you don't really feel like it's on top of you, but you don't really understand how big the space actually is. So this store is all about kind of that runway experience, very elegant, very sophisticated, very focused on itself. The Amorani store in Serbia, again, really deals with glamour with its clientele. I mean, Serbians don't really have a lot of glamour in their environments, but if you're able to shop here, then you really come from a well-established family, a lot of money. So this is, it kind of like, it exacerbates itself with these sort of glossy elements and these rich stones, marmerino. It's very domineering, but very glamorous. Okay, so before I show you a couple of extra pictures, just a quick recap. We went over different colors. We're going to talk a little bit more about culture, and we talked about history. We understand where color comes from in the different disciplines, both scientific and psychological and artistic, and how color is really like, even your whites are going to be a designer's biggest source for design. Colors can be used to be ignored, but they also can be used to really kind of pull a lot of attention out of themselves. CEU is now over. And here are a couple of different ways that you can see yellow. So yellow can be really vibrant, and it can be fun and exciting and creative. It can really be an interesting way for somebody to express themselves. Let's say you have this yellow in a bedroom. What does that say? What kind of client would say, I want yellow in my bedroom? Or, yeah, let's go with that for now. Somebody optimistic? Let's start the day, right? Okay. And so you're in somebody's bedroom, let's say. What do you use your bedroom as? You know? What do you use your bedroom as? You use that as a place to sleep, but is that a place for you to maybe hang out, read a book, relax? Do you have like a nice little sofa that you hang out on? Do you have like your little dressing room that you want to get ready to go out in? Or, is just waking up in the morning just the most important thing to you? So those colors can really kind of help to inspire whatever that person's space is actually looking for, and asking your customer or asking yourself that, what do I want to use my bedroom as? All right, if I don't hang out in there at night, then maybe blues and purples and serenes are not necessarily what I need. Maybe an exciting color to help me get the hell out of bed every morning is really what the most important thing is. Or is it red? Is it do you want excitement? Do you want passion? Okay. So here, these are people that want, they want a little bit of fun. They want to show that they are creative, that they are different. You've got a very similar, slightly more buttery yellow. This is a lot more of like a traditional kind of transitional home. A very traditional color, more transitional style. A little bit more modern with the dark wood elements, right? Like this can be any home in Westchester, really. So what might be beige or might be like an off-white color, you can just kind of give yourself one little accent, one little space. Okay? Whose favorite color is yellow? I love yellow. It's interesting. It's exciting. What is it in other countries? What was I reading earlier? I feel like it's an important color in India. I think it kind of leads into saffrons and values. Oh, China. It's probably like one of the most important colors in China. It was associated with the emperor, because it's associated with a certain part of the earth being the center of the earth, and so through the Qing dynasty, only like the emperor's family could wear yellow. So it's a very, very regal color. So it does have its importances. Here's another way of looking at yellow. So here's a nice way that you can really just kind of create what could otherwise be beige and maybe a little bit boring. Maybe just sort of reflect the landscape and all the sunlight that might be streaming into this space, and just really warm it up with a nice, easy, buttery yellow. And the same color in a completely different value and intensity and chroma actually creates excitement, okay? Creates excitement for this house, but look at how it matches the landscape. So if somebody had a yellow door in Westchester, surrounded by green trees and green leaves, that would stand out a lot more because it's against that backdrop. But against all of this kind of desert landscape, it kind of blends in even though it stands out. Okay? So this is, they want you to feel excited and uplifted every time that they come home or every time, you walk to their door. And it's an intellectual color. Like they want to have a good conversation. That's what these people want. Different ways of looking at orange. Okay. Very well contrasted. So here you've got kind of like a turquoisey sort of cabinetry, and that's interacting with the orange in a complementary color scheme. So creating a very dynamic color scheme. This is not a dynamic orange, but having this intentional contrast between colors brings so much more life to just a clay pottery sort of color, okay? And surrounded by all of the, this, black grounded subway tile, so very modern elements. So you sort of take in, very fun elements and very modern elements and very traditional elements and pull them all together into one space. So this might actually be kind of like a repeat of whatever the environment that they live in. And so you could also pair things with rose gold elements that might stand out in somebody else's home but are just going to blend right into the background in another space. Or if you had little blue flowers or something, that would really stand out. So how can you use different colors to kind of make them sort of retreat? Even though this color wants to advance onto itself, it's so subtle and so muddy and so light and competing with contrasting colors that it's kind of, kind of fading back a little bit. And then in this Moroccan themed home, orange is really making a statement. Moroccan, they've got a lot of Hinduism out there, and Hinduism, Buddhism, very strong. Orange being the color of saffron and the color of Buddhist robes. It's a very important color to those societies. It's got a sense of spirituality and a sense of legality to it. So this is definitely a statement in this home. Is this for everyone? No, but look at how surrounded by so many white walls, white windows, and so much like light, just how you really feel that color. Okay, so again, using color and intentionality and blending furniture into the space. So what's your furniture, and do you want to pop your furniture out? Use a contrasting color. Is it a loud enough piece of furniture that it can kind of blend into the background a little bit more? So, always consider when you're designing your home, not necessarily which direction you want to go, but what do you have that you just love so much that you have to make it work into what you're doing. And that's how designers such as Denise really help you to pull your spaces together is, what are you not willing to get away from? What if you have an Oriental cabinet, but you want a Moroccan home? How are you going to integrate that color? Other ways to look at orange. Obviously very fun, very youthful, very exciting, very cheerful. Like, orange is a very adventurous color, and it gets people hungry, it gets people talking, it gets them conversing, it gets them to be a lot more creative. So it's a great color to use in children's spaces, and it's very well contrasted against blue, okay? Even if these walls were white, by nature of all this light coming in and all of this orange that you've got going on, that's going to make whites actually appear more blue, because your eyes are going to sort of do the negative. Have you guys, if you have a little bit of an art background, have you ever seen the eye test where you've got a white dot in the middle of a red, you have a red dot in the middle of a white screen, and you stare at that red dot for a minute, and then you look at the white ceiling, and then you see the after image of that red dot, and that becomes kind of a greenish blue. So what happens is when you're looking at a color so much and you're overwhelmed by the color, your eye actually creates this sort of eye fatigue, and you need to see the other color in order for your eye fatigue to actually relax. That's why surgeons wear green. They used to wear white, but it was creating so much eye fatigue to look like inside of people that they needed the opposite color of red in order for their eyes to calm down. Okay? So there's all these different things that we're surrounded by that we don't really consider. Kind of fun, sherbety colors. Like, look at how interesting that color is in that space. Not necessarily what you would think, but if that were a blue wall in a very white and black bathroom, it would actually feel a lot more isolating. It would actually feel a lot colder when you wake up in the morning and you brush yourself off, you walk into the bathroom to wash your face. This room would actually physically feel colder if that wall were blue than if it were orange. And that orange reflecting against all of that white actually will make you look better in the mirror. Okay? It will actually bring the orangey warm tones out in your skin, whereas a blue will do the exact opposite. So one wall can make all the difference in the world. Again, somebody that wants help waking up in the morning. Whose favorite color is orange? All right. That was my second favorite color. Yeah, love it. It's a fun color, and sometimes I have a lot of accents of orange, but I'm not surrounding myself by orange like in my home. But I wear it all the time. I love to wear it. It makes me feel revitalized, and it makes other people feel revitalized. It's more exciting. Your outfit's a lot more exciting than mine, pattern or not. Whose favorite color is red? All right. Red is very strong, bold, passionate, seductive kind of color. It excites you. Just take a look at these spaces, and what do you see? Your eye always goes right to that red, okay? Red is not for the faint of heart, and it's not always something that you want to completely surround yourself by, because it can actually make you more angry and more agitated. But it lends for passion, okay? It's exciting, it's bold, and it's very sure of itself. And if you're not very sure of yourself, you should have more red in your life. So, another way to look at red. Not a lot of people are really going to think about that as a red, but it is kind of like a very burnt, sort of brownish red. And it does bring more activity, and it does contrast to the environment, and it really pops out, and it makes you notice that deck. Really, or if somebody's house, why are, barns are red because that was a material, the iron oxide was readily found on farms. And so they were able to use that to make pigments. But it's really good at absorbing a lot of heat. And that deck or that house is going to actually, the wood is going to absorb the heat and is actually going to dry the wood out much faster. So that wood will be more protected than a wood that might actually be a lighter color, which will stay wetter for longer. Okay, so there is functionality to some of these colors that we come up with. And amassed in a space, you really feel that space. Okay, so surrounding yourself by red also needs to be done very carefully as well. Whose favorite color is pink? Yeah, not the one spot. Okay, you love pink? Okay. Yeah, you're wearing pink. It's a nice, like, subtle, fleshy, very, like, rosy kind of peach. And it's that just, you feel that. You feel the nurturance of it. It's got a sweetness. It's got a naivete. It's very feminine. It's not masculine like red is. It has a whole other personality. And it's actually such a strong and popular color that it's the only color that actually has a name that's a lightened version of another color. So pink is very important because it's got such a visceral experience to it, to the point where you could have an entirely black room and it really just stands out and it sends a message. So here's a really good balance as well of masculine and feminine, and how to design for two maybe very opposing people. Here's a way to just add a little bit of subtlety and sweetness. Okay, just what you're surrounding, the same exact pink buy, just as an accent, really speaks volumes to what the message actually is. Here's another way of just looking at, slightly more rosier, slightly fleshier pinks as well. So a little bit more easygoing. You can completely surround a space by it. And this is just a nice space to just kind of wake up in the morning, and it will give you the activity to get the job done in a more subtle fashion than red is going to. Red will probably have you banging at the keyboards a little bit more than a pink is going to. But it helps to really kind of get things moving, and it helps to find your niceties a little bit more, okay? If the letter drafted off of this computer is definitely going to be much nicer than the letter drafted off of the red room computer, and is probably going to be a little bit sweeter than the one drafted off of the yellow room, which is merely more about intellect and communication. So another really nice way to kind of balance out femininity by, just kind of whites and blacks and how you can be more playful. Whose favorite color is green?
Green and blue.
You're green and blue?
Probably equally,
Yeah, they're two very alike. I forgot to mention, pink is the color for boys in Belgium. Okay, that's associated with boys. And I forgot what else. But it's really very Americanized pink. Red means good luck in China and in Asian companies. So normally, like the stock market in America, anything in the red is a negative. Anything over there is a positive. It means good luck. It's the color in In India, it's the color that brides wear, I believe, because it's a fresh new start. It's kind of an innocence. So again, like really important. In Korea, it's bad luck to write somebody's name in red, so you're not allowed to travel around with red pens. Green is a very nurturing color. This is all about going back to the earth. So the best way to really bring the outdoors in. Okay, you really just, you feel it, and you can surround yourself by a lot of green and not necessarily feel overwhelmed by it. Here you've got a nice, really muddy, kind of browned out version in somebody's kitchen, and here you've got a little bit more of a pastel version that you can see in their space that really kind of draws the outside in and gives a very, I don't know, just kind of very grounded sort of feeling. Here you've got this layering of 3 different greens, 4 different greens on top of one another, and the more you interplay all these different greens, the less you start to actually notice them, because they're doing their own layering effect. And one of them being so strong is going to kind of cancel out the strength of the other one that you have so much of. So always consider, if somebody really likes a color and they want to surround themselves by it, how you can sort of play around with different values of it. Here, architectural elements and shadows and highlights are really actually being used to kind of create one big giant green space and actually make it feel like it's got a little bit more movement by having all of those shadows. And just think about, like, you know, how common that is for babies' eyes. You know, babies' eyes are just developing. I often say, like, when I painted babies' rooms, I didn't even want to do the white ceiling, because they're staring at the ceiling for a couple of years of their life, and that is so reflective that it can be kind of unnerving for their eyes. So think about how relaxing and how recharging a green is. It's got that serenity and that calm from the blue, but yet it's got the youthfulness of the yellow mixed into it. So just a really nice color for somebody's eyes to develop to, and what that person becomes. Whose favorite color is blue? Usually, mostly everybody's favorite color. Not necessarily what people always want to design in, but light blues are very popular. Very functional in the bedroom, right? What do these people want to do? They want to relax. They want to use their bedroom to just tone down. These people want to make their room feel a little bit bigger. Okay, it's a pretty small room. Okay, so let's say I have this really long space, and I wanted to. Let's say I wanted to take this long, narrow space and make it feel more square. What can I do? What can I do on that wall?
Red.
Well, if you
Red.
Get, yeah, you can get the warm colors.
Yeah.
Come closer.
Exactly. So that long, narrow space, if I take a red or an orange and I painted that, it's going to advance that color onto me. And that's actually going to make those walls recede a little bit back. The other way to make that room feel a little bit more square, what could I do on that wall? Right, like a cooler color. So a blue, maybe a light purple or a light green, something to make those walls recede back. So that's how you can kind of be a little bit more intentional and playful in making, changing up the architecture of the space as best you can. Here, everything is blue, so you almost don't even really feel like you're surrounded by it as much as you feel like you're surrounded by here, okay? So I think we were talking earlier about you can paint an entire room in one color, like a blue, and actually feel less blue by painting that wall in a very muted color, either in a light or a puttyish sort of color. And you'd be bringing more attention to that very neutral color, which will help you to ignore all of the blue colors in the room that you're surrounding yourself by. So using opposites is another way that you can tone things back. And blue is just like, because it helps recede, it's just one of those colors that you could really use with a lot of intention and just paint out an entire space. you can go cabinetry, walls, ceiling, molding, everything. And just kind of, no matter how light or how dark it actually is, just sort of feel like you have a lot of space to think, just by nature of it being a very cool blue color. And again, like with all colors, the more you paint something, the more you color drench a room, the less you have blues and whites, or blues and blacks, or blues and reds, and all these opposites. The more color you have in a space, white being one of them, the busier that space gets. The busier a space gets, the more small it starts to feel. So everything starts to advance on you, no matter what color you're choosing, just by nature of it being busier.
So blue is a good office color.
Blue can be a very good office color.
I'm working with somebody who, she's a producer, she's a writer, she's always in her office, so she wants, in front of so she wants blue. But we can't figure out which blue it is because it's a photo from something. I was gonna email it to you. But yeah, I guess that kind of makes sense. If you're in that space and she's writing, she's illustrating, she's, like I said, producer, she's always
It'll
in that
make
space.
the space calm, which can help her to sit longer,
Yeah.
but could make her feel a little bit more tired. So you might want to excite it up a little bit by adding some contrast. Like maybe adding a couple of like orange touches.
Yeah, the window treatments are like a red, I guess a soft red.
Okay, or even like warm woods, just to create some contrast. Because that blues can say, okay, relax.
Yeah, her
Read a book.
nature is very like that. She's
Okay.
very,
So I would add some other punches of color, or even just black and white to just sort of excite the space a little bit more, because you don't want her to get too serene.
yeah.
She's gotta function in
Yeah.
there. Like an office has, it's gotta function to it.
She also wanted to know, she has a lot of just odd artwork. And they wanted to put it in their entrance. She wanted to know what color do they use in museums when you have all this artwork?
It really depends on the type of museum. I mean, mostly white.
She wanted to know what
because-
white.
But that's for like touch-up capabilities. I mean, Chantilly lace is going to be the cleanest of all
cleanest, yeah.
lights. But it really depends on the artwork, and it
It's
depends
just
on
all different.
all of the
It's a
commonalities.
mishmash of art.
You could do black. You
Yeah.
can do a black wall, really pop those paintings out. It's kind of really all about like what's their
What's going on,
commonality,
yeah.
what is the room being used as.
It's the entranceway of her house. It's a little strange.
But is it narrow?
No,
Is it
it's kind
wide?
of open. You walk in and it's like this, I don't know how to describe the style of the house, but, it's kind of, there's like 5 steps and there's a railing. And it just kind of goes left and right. But that whole, like, it's like a catwalk kind of.
I mean, it's a throughway zone. So
It is.
if you really want people to stop and look at the art,
Yeah.
white might be a little annoying. It might just not allow you to focus because you've got so much reflectivity coming off of it. You might want to really tone it down, depending on whether they want to go with a puttyish color
Yeah.
to just sort of tone things down, or pull in another color that's throughout the house.
And what you'll see is her office. The first bedroom through that corridor, whatever,
Okay.
will be the blue.
Okay.
So yeah, like a pretty color, I think.
Yeah, it might just calm the eyes
Yeah.
down enough to focus on the actual artwork. Especially because like people aren't going to sit there and look at art; they're going to pass through it. And you go, oh, I like that. If you want them to stay, you got to calm your eyes down a little bit. Whose favorite color is purple? Wow, look at that. Okay. So imaginative, spiritual, dreamy, like it's like the color of Disney. There's a sweetness that has that like pinkish quality, but that calmness that has the blue. It's just very dreamy, serene color that's got a little bit of a charge to it. So you can see, this could very easily be a blue space, but it's warmed up just that little bit by having that violetness to it, that little bit of red that's kind of tied in. Alternative. Usually people that like purple have a little bit of that kind of like alternative edge to them, okay? So it's another color to really consider and have fun with. And then you can also be very bold with it. You know, when we're sort of past that like eggplant stage, but you know, that kind of like hazy lilac, that sort of dulled down purplish color is a really popular color. And what you pair it with really helps to bring more life to it. Again, a lot of contrasting colors. If this chair weren't in here, you'd have a lot more of a blending effect. But how you can take a rug that has colors in it, and instead of putting it in a white or a beige room, really bring all those colors out by pairing another color with it. And again, how you can be more playful with this kind of like, it's a clayish, like it's called Amazon soil. So it's got a purplish quality to it, but it's not obnoxiously purple. And you're really bringing, you know, the fun out of it with, you know, just a couple of extra boxes. You know, it's like, that's a quart of another bead. His favorite color is white. Everybody loves white, you know, you gotta have your white. Remember that whites can actually start to feel a little bit isolating if you're not really layering them. So having one white everywhere can really just be, I don't know, it's like kind of institutional. So you really have to be careful. The littlest bit of warmth, the little bit of contrast, it would really take white molding and white pottery to see how there actually is a yellowish tint to this white. So be playful, layer nicely. Again, now you can really start to see, again, how more isolating it actually feels. And almost everything's exactly the same. It helps to make it feel really big, but not necessarily really comforting. And whose favorite color is black?
I love black.
Black's amazing. So cool. And I love the fact that people are painting their houses black. And you've got the houses around here, they're black, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's like, it stands out so much against the landscape, but yet it also just blends right in at the same time. It's so easy to look
This
at.
past spring, everybody wanted a black wallpaper for an accent wall. Everybody. And it just fizzled out.
Try looking at like blacks that have a little bit of a brownishness to them, because those, it's not like that stark black, chalk black, cool black. There's a little bit more warmth to it. Like the cheating part, I don't have anything that I can think about in this handout, but blacks can be really nice.
It's very sexy. I love black.
Yeah, it is very sexy. And then it's all like what you
There's
pair
so many
with.
outer rooms that were black and black wallpaper, black everything. It was all in the spring and then it just died out. It was interesting. So
Okay.
it just comes in waves.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be back.
But it's very sexy.
People are just doing it all over, and you know the exteriors are really nice.
I love
It pairs
that,
really
yeah.
great with like the gold hardware. I mean, that's a laundry room.
Yeah.
Like, who really thinks to do things like that? But how special is that? I mean, that could be a bar at the same time. It's like, it's so special and so intentional. And it's really not like the most elaborate thing, but it really stands out. Oh, I guess it's the same house as the And other ways of looking at it, this is actually probably a green that's so dark that it looks like it's black, and you know, contrasting with the pink to add more visual interest. But I mean, black kitchens are wonderful too because it's just a little bit more quiet. Like it's bold, but it's calm on your eyes. It's not like
a lot of
reflecting.
sun coming in now, I think. Otherwise, it can be really dark. That's my problem.
Well, you've got to have proper lighting, you know, whether it's electronic lighting or it's natural lighting. But sometimes, you know, making a small dark room, just be a small dark room.
I've been in black, small apartments where the kitchen was black and it was just gorgeous.
Yeah.
Just very tasteful.
It's dramatic, and you just make sure that you have enough task lighting so that, you know, you're shopping safely, things like that, that you're able to move about the space very easily. But sometimes there's just not enough light that you can even put into a small space to make it feel big. Or there's too much furniture, and you've got to ignore all that furniture, and the best way to ignore all the dark chocolate furniture is to have a dark black wall behind it so that everything blends in and it actually quiets it a lot more. Or if it's a room, it's a den that you're just watching television in. You know, there's so much also already coming off of the television. Do you want a bright white wall behind it, or do you want a really dark wall behind it?
Cozy.
Yeah, just it's like it quiets your eyes down. Like you look at this room, and you know what's reflective and what's kind of like unnerving versus what's actually just really soothing. All right, and that's it. This is the part where I talk about paint. So, Aura Bath and Spa. This is the only mat on the market that can go in a high humidity or a bathroom space. Ceilings as well as walls. Ray, I hope you're not one of these guys, but I see specs all the time.
Always.
Thank you. So I see specs all the time, and this is why I always tell my designers, I don't care if it's a bathroom ceiling, I will write that spec. Because the contractor is going to take the same ceiling paint that he used throughout the entire home, and he's going to use that in the ceiling in the bathroom, and then you're going to get a call in 5 years because the ceiling's falling apart, because it's not made to hold up to the moisture. So if you want that flat look, like all the other ceilings, but you need the mildew and the moisture resistance, you can get that with the Aura Bath and Spa. White on the ceiling, the color on the walls, you're good to go. It's a beautiful, velvety, smooth finish, and it has less surfactant leaching, all those brown streaks that come out of your bathroom walls. You can just wash those off, okay? Aura is, look, that's our top of the line paint. I'm not the person that's like, oh, you gotta do Aura all the time, $90 a gallon of paint. But if you're gonna go with a dark color, you will achieve that color much faster if you go with Aura. You will spend a lot, $30 more, $20, $30 more for the can of paint, but you will also spend a lot less on labor, okay? $300 a day on labor, $30 on a can of paint. I always suggest tint the primer, and usually 2 coats, and you're good to go.
And
You have
also
a-
color retention, you got the color with because
Yep.
it has that pigments.
Yep, great quality pigments, resins that are actually, what we do is it's called color lock technology. It's all proprietary. Each one of those little pigment molecules are wrapped by the resin molecule, so it's very well protected. So you can wash it and it'll really hold its color a lot longer. Even in the exterior, those houses, those black houses, if you use a cheap can of paint, guess what? You're gonna save a lot of money on paint. You're gonna be painting 5 years later because all of that color is gonna fade. So you don't really get the color fade with Aura in the exterior version as well. So it's just an amazing campaign. Regal is our tried and true. It's got the stain resistant. It's also got some scuff resistance to it. So it's a great can of paint. Comes in all different finishes. So really good for washability in kitchens. Here you probably got a satin back here. I really like the eggshell on the walls, spaghetti and stuff splashes all over the place if you want more washability. Not just wipeability, but washability. Regal Select. I mean, that's what Benjamin Moore has been known for such a long time. Ben, that's our starter to the Benjamin Moore premium product line. This also remains zero VOC. It comes in matte eggshell satin and semi-gloss. And if you've got a customer that just wants to pay that big box price, they were thinking about going to Home Depot and getting a $40, $50 gallon of paint, they're not looking for a premium, you can have that in the Benjamin Moore line. Look, I can give you a $19 gallon of eggshell for walls. I can give you a $90 gallon of eggshell for walls. We're not really known for the $19 gallon, but we do have them, every $10 in between. But you're going to get what you pay for. So when it comes to the home, you don't want to be repainting things. Nobody's going around touching things up. You want to use the right thing. Advance. This is a waterborne alkyd, so it's actually an oil-based paint, kind of slow drying, not smelly and odorous and slow drying like the old oil-based paints. It's a newer formula with very low VOCs, but that 4 to 6 hour dry allows all the brush strokes and the stipple marks from the roller to level out really nicely. So it's like a candy coating, like you get a really nice furniture finish. Really good for doors and trim, but also really great for cabinetry and furniture. Okay, so that's really what I would go for cabinetry paint. I prefer something else for when you're using whites, because as an oil-based paint, it could yellow down the line. It doesn't always, but for colors, I would go with Advance. For whites, either Command or Cabinet Coat. And then you've got our waterborne ceiling paint, so this can be tinted to any color, and it's an ultra flat. So if you've got matte walls everywhere and you really want to contrast against the ceiling, the ultra flat is even flatter than flat. It's great. And too far. And that's it. I really appreciate your attention. I know that I totally took more than my hour. We actually, I think Instagram even shut us off. They were like, you're done. I just noticed that about 10 minutes ago. It wasn't really worth saying.
No, it's going.
Oh, okay, we're still going. Okay. All right, thank you everybody for your attention.
Oh my God. I mean, now we want to go back and change our house colors. Like, I don't even know which one.
Just
But
based on my
you know, you
entire
nailed it,
inside
because
of my
orange
house
is.
was.
And I mean, you're looking good and green. So, you know, we're doing our color pretty well. But thank you guys so much. Have a little more if you want. You know, we're just going to chill for a little while longer. But thanks again for it.
Thank you.
Toni, you're so awesome.
I'll be
Yeah.
here for a while.
If you have any
you
questions,
guys
also.
have. Also, there are folders full of brochures. My cards are in those. You're all welcome to call me anytime you want. You know, we've got great services. We've got our color rendering that's on our website. You could also go on our website. It says Ask Betty color information, and you can basically talk to Betty, and she can help you to come up with colors for your spaces. You can look up each color in our search engine and tap on that color, and it'll tell you so many things about that color, colors that match it, lighter and darker versions of it, colors to coordinate with it. So our website really has a lot of information. I even printed out a couple of other things. These things are really cool that you can find on our website as well. And I can only print out a few of them, but they were whole house color schemes. So you can really kind of design your whole house with one of many of these different color schemes, and they've kind of put them together with different styles. So this one's classic and timeless. This one's modern traditional. If you want to be shabby chic or eclectic or hygge, so I guess it's like Swedish. Here's a bohemian vintage inspired. So it gives you really fun colors to play around with. And let's say you don't really like exactly that blush, but you could find another blush that's very similar to it and kind of base it off of that. You could go into the website and put that blush in it, and it'll give you lighter and darker versions of it. It'll give you other matching colors. So you can kind of be playful that way. I mean, every website is really just amazing with offering a lot of different things. You could even put a picture of your own room in there and pop the color into the room. We also have an app that's like that. It's called Benjamin Moore's Color Portfolio. You take a picture of the wall and just click on the wall and turn the wall whatever color you want it to be.
It's amazing.
It's fun.
We love Benjamin. You guys are.
I do too.
Well, again, thank you so much. Anybody has questions? Feel free to ask. And for you all, isn't that crazy? You're so good. All right, thank you, everybody. We'll see you soon.